Hello, am I audible?
You are audible, please go ahead.
Yes, all right, thank you. Well, thank you very much for joining once again during your weekend. And today we will be discussing, it's going to be the last series of the tech walk that we are hosting on Azure DevOps. And we are going to speak about deploying an infrastructure in Azure using Azure DevOps environment. We'll speak about the different tools like we have already discussed about Terraform, and today we'll be discussing about the Ansible that we have. So before getting on to that, yes, I'm Firoz Khan. People who are new to this series, I'm Abdul Rashid Firoz Khan. I'm a Microsoft MVP on Azure, and I'm a Microsoft certified trainer as well. I'm the founder of the company named CodeSizzler, which is a Microsoft partner on application development and on learning. And we host trainings for Microsoft partners. We do individual trainings as well for our partners like Boeing, Infosys, Wipro, all these people. And we take care of consultings as well, doing migration projects. We do migrations from on-premise to cloud, setting up hybrid cloud environment, and we do work on developing solutions for IoT, AI solutions, all these things. So that's a quick introduction of mine. And you can follow me on Twitter. And here is my email ID as well, which you can use to reach me out. So, on top of these things, of course, I hold a tag with Dear Azure as well. So we run. Kazim and myself and other like top leaders who are in community. We run two community organizations. One is Dear Azure, and the other one is Azure Ninjas, where we host tracks which are related to Azure. We host continuous series of webinars which are related to Azure, especially. And you can do follow us. Like we have the Twitter handler of Dear Azure, which is so much active. We host like Dear Azure those programs that we have, and we also have the next probably a very short period of time where we are going to start the training track, which is on fundamentals, which gives you a heads up about how you need to prepare for Azure fundamentals, for Power Apps fundamentals, AI fundamentals. So there are a lot many tracks you can do. Follow Kazim Sheikh, or you can even follow me, where you can get the updates from. So with this introduction, I would like to get into this provisioning Azure resource on Azure DevOps environment. The last series of tracks which we had been discussing about hosting a multi-container application on Kubernetes service. We were discussing about hosting an application towards a web app as well. How you need to come up with a pipeline, the basics of DevOps, like you have boards, you have repos, okay, and we do had lot many discussions which were about to host applications by releasing pipelines and do build and commit operations as well. So that was the previous tracks which we had. Just a heads up on the DevOps. Of course, we cannot make it like at one day. We cannot make it like you'll be having a lot of things to be added up. So we just set a heads up about the services that we have. And today we are about to discuss about provisioning Azure resources on Azure DevOps. So in case if you're new to Azure environment, I would like to give you a heads up that the Azure has plenty many services. Azure is a cloud platform where you have a lot of services, which can be like, you can say simply from a web application, or you can even develop APIs and you can host APIs on Azure portal. You have the API management service. So you can also go with automation things to be taken up. Any automated things like IoT. You have IoT Hub and IoT Shoot, which Microsoft supports. And they also support you with open source platforms. They have their own service as well. Like you have Windows 10 IoT Core OS joining the hands of Raspberry Pi, on which you can go up with the hosting all your IoT solutions. And we do have the virtual machines, right? Let's forget about the days that we are going to work on VMware or Wintel, all these things. Microsoft has officially came up with supporting the open source platforms where we have Windows, we have Linux environments, all those things, and you can host your applications just there. And if your question is like why Azure, then it's pretty much simple that Azure is said to be the rock star who has more and more amount of data center regions. I often used to come across with a statement saying that you add Azure, I mean you add GCP and you also add AWS with it, yet you cannot reach the count of the Azure data centers that we have. So these are the things which makes your flexibility on hosting the service. And of course, where DevOps gets involved, it breaks the wall of having your separation between the development team and the operations team that we have. So you're going to join at one stretch. You're just going to keep the things to be much more flexible. You develop sprint, you develop boards. You need to manage tasks that it gets occupied with the project. You just go with boards and you can manage it. You also have tools integrated, like we have Kanban boards. Okay, you have projects which can be gone with Maven for automated infrastructure. You can use Terraform. You can even go with Ansible. Okay, you have the pipelines which are available. You can do testing as well with DevOps itself. So all services has been brought with one stretch. Like you just have one environment on which you can host all your services, and that's exactly where we have landed up with the DevOps environment. So today we are going to discuss about these things, like deploying infrastructure to Azure can be done with three major ways. One is Azure Portal, a very simpler one. You just go to the Azure Portal, you understand the basics of the services that it's looking for. Let's say, for example, if you want to create a virtual machine, you need to know about the networking. You'll be having a VM where you need to host VNet. Okay, you'll be having a network security group inside of VNet. You would be having once again like your diagnostic storage account, your OS image, your availability set to make sure that the application is already always available. You will be having availability zones as well. So these things makes pretty much simple. I mean, you just get the UI on which you can develop your VM. So you're going to spin up the service, and once when you're done with spinning up the service, the rest of the things are going to be taken care by Azure. So you're going to just focus on developing the application. That's it. You're no more going to focus on things like you will be having. Excuse me. Yeah, you'll be no more focusing on things like managing the infrastructure or anything. So that's exactly where we go with Azure and Portal, just for the taking an advantage of the UI environment that we have. Cool. The next thing that we have here is to be ARM templates. ARM is like Azure Resource Manager. I'll be showing you how an ARM template will look like. So you will just go with the ARM template and you will mention the parameters on which you have to do the changes. So let's say you have templates which are available. When you go with Visual Studio, you can find the templates that you have. And excuse me. Yeah, thank you. So what happens with the ARM template is that you need to make sure that you will change the basic things of the parameters alone. So parameters is that change the name of the VM, okay? Change the name of the VNet that you're going to create, change the name of the storage account that you create. The reason is it has to be with the REST endpoint, okay? So this is exactly where we go with much more simplified customization to host any sort of infrastructure environment. And secondly, we have the support with PowerShell, or you have the support with the CLI environment. This is all like you have a command line interface. The command line interface is where like PowerShell is from the side of Microsoft, and CLI, which has been supported for long days with the open source environment. So you either open up a bash environment or you open up with a PowerShell, you just give the commandlets and you can get the infrastructure to be up. So these are the two things that we are going to discuss. And apart from that, officially speaking from the side of Microsoft, they support a lot for this object, which is said to be Terraform. So Terraform is said to be like the complete open source layer that we have, which can it can support for hybrid scenarios, like you combine the on-premise and the cloud connectivity that you have. So there we can use Terraform. And the competitor for Terraform, on the other hand, is said to be Ansible. So you can go with Ansible. Ansible is also an open source environment that we have. You can automate the cloud provisioning. You can do the config management and application deployments as well. So using Ansible, you can, let's say, for example, you can provision a VM. You can provision container, networking, VPN, any infrastructure that you have in the cloud environment. So today we are going to discuss about deploying an infrastructure and setting up automation. Okay, so this is going to be the demo. We are going to discuss about, excuse me, hosting an ARM template. I'll let you know how an ARM template exactly looks like. And then we will go with Ansible. We will make sense about how you can deploy with Ansible. Okay. And we will also have a continuation where we are going to speak about Azure pipelines. Okay. So Azure pipelines is that I have already covered it on the previous session, speaking about Terraform with Azure pipelines. So today I will not be giving a touch base on it, but then I'll be discussing about how the Ansible is going to be configured on the infrastructure. So let's get into the demo. Excuse me. Yeah. So we go, yeah, here we go. I'll go with the portal. I want to keep chat to be opened at one side. Cool. So here we go. Let me take up my portal. Yes, I'm good. So here is my Azure portal, how it looks like. And I told you like we have multiple ways. One is the ARM template that you can go up with, and then the Ansible that you have as well. So to go with the ARM template, I will better say that I will go with a VM, okay, where I have Visual Studio and I can show you how the parameter looks like. Let me connect for it. Okay, there we go. So here I need to open up Visual Studio. Just hold on, it's getting loaded. It's getting loaded. Let's wait. So here I have my Visual Studio. Let me open it up. See, with Visual Studio and Azure SDK to be added up, you can create projects which can help you to deploy your infrastructure and the code that you have for Azure. So let's say, for example, you can define the web host, you can define the website and the database of your app just by going up with the parameter that you need. So here with Visual Studio, let's say that I need to create a new project. Let me click here. And see, when you get this template, no, you need to make sure that you will select Azure Resource Group. Don't worry, you will be getting the recording. Okay, you can follow the YouTube channel of Dear Azure, or you can even follow up Kasim or myself on LinkedIn where you can find the recording of this. So let's say Azure Resource Group. Okay, can you find this? So here you get a template, you get an ARM template over here. I'm sorry, yeah. So let's select Azure Resource Group and I'll click on next. So here we are going to create a project named Azure Resource Group 1 and the framework you can switch on. Here you can find the versions of the .NET framework that you have. You can opt for the one which supports for, let's say, the NuGet package that you're looking for. Okay. So based on those versioning, excuse me, based on those versioning, you can select the framework over here. Let me click on create to get the ARM template to be created. And now, just for an instance, to make sure about the ARM template, I will here say that I need a web app. See, this is all the templates that you have. To make it simple, no, I would say like when you say VM skill set, if you want to know about VM skill set, you know like you're going to spin up a group of virtual machines together. Let's say even 1,000 virtual machines at one stand. So you can set an alert, you can set an alert saying that when the CPU metrics crosses 70% or 80% of utilization, then you want the VM to spin up as such. Like you need the clusters to be increased with count. So when let's say a VM scale set will be a group of virtual machines which have been spinned up at one stand, and when the first VM that's running, when it crosses the CPU percentage of 70, in utilization, then the second VM will start to work, and then the third VM, and then the fourth VM, like that. So based on the utilization, you can spin up the services in an automated way. So this will ideally help you to have more in application reach, more in IOPS. Okay, so this is exactly where we go with VM skill set. It's a master and slave nodes that you're going to maintain for an infrastructure on VM. Whereas when I simply say a virtual machine, it's going to be a standalone VM. You will be just having one VM at one stand. That's it. Okay, here let's take web app with SQL. Okay, so this is going to be a combination of web application to be hosted on Azure, connecting with Azure SQL database. So let me take this and I'll click on OK. You can keep your questions to be written on the chat if you have any. I'll stick to your questions probably for the last 15 minutes. Okay, probably this demo should take me under 15 to 20 minutes. So once when I'm done with it, I'll stick to your questions that you have. Okay, here you have this solution explorer and you can find the solution files that we have. When you say deploy Azure Resource Group, it's going to be a PowerShell script. And this PowerShell script will invoke the PowerShell commands to deploy your Azure Resource Manager. You can just deploy the script that you have on Azure. Okay, so that's set to be deploy Azure Resource Group.json. See, you can find the website SQL database. You have the parameter files as well. So these files you can find it has been given here. Now, if your question is like what this website SQL database.json can do, then it's pretty much simple that it defines the infrastructure which you want to deploy towards your Azure. It will also have the parameters where you're going to provide during deployment. It defines the dependencies between the resource so that the resource manager will deploy the resource in a correct order. So when I open this now, you can find like, see, it's getting loaded. See, we have these things. Like, let me make it simple. This is going to spin up a web app. And here is the app service plan. You have free app service plan, you have basic, you have standard. Okay, you can find all those things here. And you will be selecting an app service plan among these things. So this is what I said, like you're going to deploy the dependencies and you're going to mention the parameters which it has to use during deployment. The next pointer that you have here is to be website SQL database.parameters.json. This is set to be a parameter file that contains values which are needed for the template. You can pass the parameter values to customize each deployment. So let's go up here for this file, website SQL database.json. And when you expand this JSON outline, you can find here you have all these different sort of let's say the parameters that you have. So one is set to be a stock unit's name, stock unit capacity. See, hosting plan name is nothing but the web app name that you're going to use. And this is the stock unit capacity. So it will say like, is it going to be a basic plan or standard plan like that? And you will be having the capacity which you're going to use. Administer login, that is the login and password that you need for the database. Here is the DB name. The collation model that you're going to use, that will be default. You are going to use SQL Latin, which is supported by Microsoft. The edition where you can find like the plan that you have for database, or you're going to use a basic plan, standard plan, or you're going to use elasticity on it or what. Okay, so those things will be there on edition. Yeah. At top of this, you also have the resource. So when you say resource, see, we can find the SQL server, you find the web app, all these things. If you want to add a resource, you can just right click and you can say add new resource. And here you can find all the Azure services that we have. So my topic is almost related to infrastructure, which I'm designing to you, which I'm discussing to you. So let's say storage. I'll select storage account and I need to give some unique name here. Let me say it will be Dear Azure Storage. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And let me click on add. Can you find this? We have Dear Azure. And the script for that, the JSON script for that will be developed by Visual Studio. You no need to script it. So this is how it goes. Okay, you can add the values. You can find the values that it gets added up here. So you have the display name which gets added. Okay. So here when I say storage type, give me a moment. Let me show you. See, yes. Can you find this? We have different sort of replication methods, and here they are using default, which is said to be standard locally redundant. Now, Visual Studio also provides you the intelligence, okay, to help you understand what properties are available when you're gonna edit the template. So let's say I will go for this hosting plan. Okay, so here let's say hosting plan, and here in this hosting plan node, let's add a new property in the editor. Okay, here you can find, see, we have it here, hosting plan name. And here, let's say that I'll be adding some name. Okay, let's say comma. And when I put up, see, you're getting number of workers. So that's the intelligence. The number of workers that you find here is said to be the intelligence. Let's say I'll add number of workers and I'll give the value as 1. Okay. Yep. Right. Oh, I'm sorry. So here you get the values to be added up. Okay, we are adding the number of workers to be 1 as such. And you can also delete the rules. Like, let's say if you want to do any sort of customization, see here, you can find deleting the rules for CPU utilization, all those things. I will show you. Yeah. Auto scale settings. Yeah. And app insights components. Let's go up here. We haven't read up there. Let's check. Okay, that's not there. All right, alert is not there. Fine, that's okay. So if you want to delete, no, you will just right click and you will say delete this. So now when you delete this, I'll say auto scale settings will be deleted. Is that okay? Now you can try deploying it. You just right click on the solution explorer, you go to deploy, and you say a new deployment to be done. So when you say a new deployment here, you have the option to say like which account you're going to use for deployment. Let's say if I need to add an account, I'll say add a new account. And let's select the account here. Let's keep it added up. All right, so here the account has been added. And okay, it's looking for credentials to be re-entered. Let me check. Right, just hold on. Let me check for the code. I'm looking for the code. Hold on. Reaches at codesysler.info. Re-enter your credentials again. Yes, good. Now I got the code. Well, so the code is, that sounds good. 51060. There we go. And let's create a new resource group. See, can you find this? We have resource group. You need to select the subscription and you say create new for the resource group. And add the resource group here, Dear Azure DevOps resource group. Okay. The location where it has to be hosted, let's say Southeast Asia, and I'll create it. And now we are saying that call the deployment template from website that you have SQL database.json and the template parameter from website SQL database.parameters.json. Let's click on deploy hosting plan. Hosting plan name, you can select some hosting plan name. That should be unique, of course. So you go here and you say that you need to give up some plan name. Dear Azure again. Oh, what's that? Come on. Dear Azure. Okay. And okay, Code Sizzler. So CDS. So that's my plan name. I'm going to use a free trial, and for the database, I'll give the credentials as system admin and the password that it's looking for. So, and okay, database name, let's say lab database that I'm going to create. And you have the collection edition. Let's you're going to use a basic SQL database. The requested service object that you can find here, and the replication pattern that it's going to use. So let's click on save. It gets the value to be added up. And here you can find the deployment is going on. Build succeeded, template is validated. Okay, you'll get the PowerShell to be opened up. It will ask you for the password, the administrator. See, the administrator login password has to be entered. This is for the SQL admin password that you need to get. So my SQL admin password is, let me give it here. Yeah. And you can find the deployment goes here. Can you find this account, the tenant ID, all those things? It's getting deployed. Website SQL database is not valid to the validation procedure. Okay, that's fine, but you can find it on the portal. Okay, I will show you. The validation failed, but this is how the deployment gets gone. The reason is the name would be taken by someone else. Okay, it's not a valid storage account name because maybe I would have done some other demo with Dear Azure 123 like that. Okay, but let's understand the concept here. The takeaway is going to be with the concepts. So you go here, see, I'll click on resource group. You can find the resource group which we created, Dear Azure DevOps resource group. And you can also find like the services, whatever you're saying, that will be created over here only. So if the storage account works good, then you can just go up here and you can find it gets deployed. You can also add values like, let's say if you want to add any other resource, you go to the resource and you can say add new. Let's say if you want to add some ASP.NET application, then you can say web app again. Can you find this web app and you can keep it to be added up. So this is how the ARM template works. Is that okay? Any questions on ARM templates? Any questions on the ARM template part?
So I have one question. So let's say in this case we are provisioning just the SQL the web application, but which type of web application there? Let's say if I want to deploy any Angular web application, so how to go about it? This is just going to create a template, a skeleton of this the configurations, right?
Yeah. So what you need to do is that in your JSON file, you need to keep the parameters. I showed you the parameters, right? So there you need to keep it updated, like you're going to use Linux, and what exactly the platform that you're going to use. Like it's going to be use it Angular that you want to use, or you can say Node.js that you're going to use. So those things has to be mentioned on the parameter file, and then it can get deployed. Hello.
Can you walk us through the like format of JSON files? Like for example, there were some things coming up like schema and all those things. So I mean, at a very high level, I understand it may take much time.
Sure. Cool. Okay. See, this is said to be the ARM template. Okay, you have JSON file. You have a schema where the schema says about the version that you're going to use and the template that you're going to deploy. So you're going to do a template deployment where you have built the template, okay, and you can set a version for it. Let's say now say for example, if you're going to come up with the same sort of objective to be met, but if you need a different version, then you can say 1.1 something like that. So this schema is to identify like what sort of version that we are going to use. And the plan, the first parameter that we are going to use, see, I'll say view JSON outline. Oh, where's my the windows? Yes, let's go for JSON outline. So here, when I open up this file, no, you will be able to find JSON. Hey, what's that? Yeah, can you find this? So all these parameters is nothing but when you create a web app, you need a hosting plan. That's your app service plan that you have. And you also have the stock units that you need to define. Okay, so these things, I mean, among these services that you have, you can pick the values that you need. So that will be defined on parameters. So parameters is said to be the huge sort of things where it's going to hold all your services that you have, the options that you have in the service, the capacity of your web app, the data center region of your web app, the name of the web app. Okay, so those things will be available here. Now, the question which was posted by someone, no, now they were asking about like, what in case if I need to spin up a web app using Angular? In that case, you need to write it here. You have to say like what sort of version that it has to use. Okay, so that's exactly where we go. Now, here, okay, this you people are clear with. This is all, I mean, the complete parameter is going to help you out to mention the capacity, to mention the DB name, web app name, data center region, all these things. Parameters done, and just let me complete, and then you can post your question. Can you go on mute, please? Yeah. Please make sure that you will be on mute. Let's not bother others. Okay, it'll break the flow of the session. Okay. The next one that you can find here is the resource. So there are something called as resource providers. And this resource provider has to be enabled on your subscription. Only then you can create the service. To make it simple, you can find here in the portal, let me go for subscriptions. And here you can find resource providers. So let's say I need SQL Server. No, in that case, I can search for SQL here. See Microsoft.SQL, it has to be registered. Only if this is registered, then you can create a SQL database. So that's what we have it here. You're saying that Microsoft.SQL and it has to create a SQL Server based on the data center location that you're going to give. And here is the API version that we are going to use, the username and password that you're going to give for the database. Okay, that will be here. So this is all the variables that you have for the resource. So there are multiple variables because you have plenty many services that you're going to create. No, so you have for website and also for the SQL database. Any questions?
Yes, actually, I have a question. This is like, so for example, in the future, like if you want to like upgrade the size of the VM, so can we use the same template and we just modify the size of the studio here? And if we exclude the same template, will the particular parameter will get updated or will it cause
No, you can use the same template. So what happens here is that you will be using the same template, and whatever the values that you already have, no, that will be overwritten. So it's not going to bother about the existing VM or anything. Let's say if your question is that you have a VM which is running B2MS of size, and you're looking for the machine to be upgraded with some other size, let's say DS1 underscore V2 or something like that. In that case, you can change the parameter and you can release, like if you're using DevOps, you can use commit and release pipelines, which we discussed on the previous session. If not, you can even deploy this itself. You can right click and you can say deploy, okay? And you will go for the recent deployment, selecting the resource group. You can overwrite the values that it has. Is that okay?
yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Also,
Hi,
sir,
Okay, go ahead.
In production, which is the most preferable way of having JSON and parameter file? I've seen that like you have done it from Visual Studio. Some people they also do it when they provision a resource. Then before provisioning, Azure gives the JSON and the parameter file, and also there are other some other options available from Azure portal. In production, what is the most preferred way, or maybe there is some GitHub site from where you can download these JSON based files. So my question is like, what is the most preferable way of doing it, and which make more sense in production environment if we are deploying the through ARM?
Okay. So to answer your question, it actually depends upon like who is gonna be the person. I mean, the one who is going to spin up a search. The reason is that see, things are like let's say for example, if infra guys needs to spin up a virtual machine or something, then you cannot ask him to do any sort of code, right? He has to go for the portal and he has to spin up only from the portal environment. Provided DevOps people, I mean the current DevOps engineer, of course, has a need where they need to manage the infrastructure as well. So in that case, I mean, in a production environment again, the most probably used one is said to be Visual Studio. So they go with pipelines. Either they go with Visual Studio and take the code from here, release it on the pipelines that you have in Azure DevOps, or the other way that they do is that get the code to be cloned or get the code to be forked from the GitHub repo that they have, and then they can release the pipelines. So the most probably for DevOps engineers, for developer guys, the one which is feasible is said to be VS and VS with Azure DevOps. That's it. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Right. Any other questions? Cool. So with that, I would like to just give a heads up. I would not take most of your time, but then I will discuss a few things about the Ansible. The previous session that we had, we were discussing about your Terraform. And just like the Terraform, we also have the other open source platform, which is said to be Ansible. DevOps most probably works with these two things. One is Terraform, the other one is Ansible. Okay, and it's all like I don't see like much difference that you have. It's all up to you to go with any of the ways where you can use the automated things to be provisioned and to be managed. So here, your Ansible is a cloud provisioning automated environment with open source environment, which helps you to configure the management, the application deployments, and everything. So using Ansible, you can provision VM, you can provision containers or I mean any service that you have in Azure. Ansible includes like a suite of Azure modules and Ansible modules as well that can be executed directly on your playbooks using Azure DevOps environment. Users can go, they can create their own modules. The modules can be used to control the system of the resource, like the services, the packages that you're going to release, or even the files that you have. So for interacting with Azure services, I mean, Ansible includes a suite of Ansible tools or Ansible modules which you need to use. Okay. So to implement Ansible on an infrastructure as code environment, you can go with a demo. Please. Yeah. So here we have it. You can go to the demo generator of the DevOps in Azure, and let me sign in. Let me create a project. I'll say Dear Azure DevOps. Okay, and let's put it on Azure Ninja's TechWalk. Here is the selected template, which is set to be Ansible, and we are going to spin up that. So when you say choose template, you can find almost like all platforms that are available here. I can go to DevOps Labs. I can say either I will use Terraform or I will use Ansible. Okay, or I need a Docker to be spinned up. Those things can be seen here. Well, okay, let's say Ansible itself, and then we will get it created. So this gets created, eventually you can also take your service principal. You need to create a service principal because, as I told you, Ansible includes a set of modules, okay, for interacting with the Azure Resource Manager. It gives you the tools to easily create and orchestrate your infrastructure environment on Azure. Okay, so using the ARM modules, you can authenticate with Azure API. See, now this DevOps has been imported. You can say navigate to the project and you can find the project which will be available on the Azure DevOps environment. Now we need the permissions to be added up. So let's create a service principal. And to make it simple, like I told you, we have Portal, we have ARM template, and also we have PowerShell and Cloud Shell. So let's go for shell.azure.com. Yes. Here, I will try running a command for service principal. So I'll say Azure Active Directory, go to service principal and create a service principal for role-based access control. The name of the service principal is going to be Dear Azure Service Principal. So this gets created and it will provide you the value on JSON. It will give you the app ID, the display name, the password, all those things. Right? Can you find this? So we have name which is created and the app ID and password. Let's copy this. Okay, you can copy all these things. I'll keep it on the notes. My notes. Yep, here I have. Remove all the previous things. We'll put up here. Yeah. Okay. So now let's say AZ account, show it. Okay, so you can find the account. We have multiple subscriptions, you have multiple tenants as well. You can find those things here. You also need to copy the ID, okay, the subscription ID that you have. So that can be done from this. Now let's configure Ansible in a Linux machine. So for that, I want you, I want like a VM to be created. So let's go up here. We will say that a virtual machine has to be created with the Linux. There we go. I'll create a new resource group. I'll say it's Ansible or Dear Azure resource group. Okay. And the data center location is going to be Southeast Asia, where it's going to be deployed. So see, this is the same thing which we gave on the ARM template parameters. And for the VM name, I would say that it's going to be Ansible VM. Size, okay, let it be ds1_v2, and I'll say the username is going to be demo user and password for the same. Let's create it now. So now a Linux machine will be created, and inside this Linux machine, we are going to configure your Ansible, okay? Eventually, you can keep me posted if you have any questions until it gets deployed.
In which scenarios Ansible is much better than using Terraform or maybe ARM one?
I'm sorry, if I'm not wrong, your question was about using Ansible or Terraform, which is better, is it? Am I right?
Yes, and about the pricing thing also, like if you can cover.
No, this is said to be an open source environment. So, I mean, we did not plan for the pricing to be added up on this discussion, but just to make sure that you're not disappointed, you can go for azure.microsoft.com and there you have the pricing calculator. So it's pretty much simple. You just go to Azure pricing and you get the pricing to be added up here. Well, to answer your question, like when to use Terraform and when to use the other things. So it's common, like you should have seen, we have four major guys who come into the market. One is Terraform, the other guy is to be Ansible. You should have seen Puppet, and we have the Chef management as well. So to answer like which is better, like Ansible or all these things, I would say Ansible is written on Python, and it also supports your YAML command scripts that you have provided. See, Python and YAML, these are most flexible things that you have on domain specific, okay, for most of the developers. Provided that's not the case when you speak about the Puppet or when you speak about, okay, Terraform, I agree, Terraform also will go with the same. Whereas when you go with Puppet or other things, no, you need to go with Ruby. Okay, it's built with Ruby, and you have to go with embedded Ruby language to make any sort of difference that you have. And the advantage that you have with this Ansible is that your Ansible allows you to take much of the tools which can be collaborated with other environments as well. Like let's say it can be even in AWS. Okay, your domain pipelines can be hosted even on AWS environments. You can fork it from there. Okay, you have lot many artifacts which are supported as well on Ansible. So, in a practice of hybrid cloud, it's recommended you stick to Ansible. If you're having the practice of just hosting on Azure environment, and if you're looking for the artifacts which are need to be supported on Azure itself, then you can go with Terraform. Terraform is more powerful if it's said to be within Azure. Okay, if your application is going to be hosted within Azure. If it is going to be hybrid or if it's going to be on a cross-platform, then you need to move up with Ansible. Is that okay?
Yeah, I have also seen like people like in an enterprise environment, people are using more of Ansible Tower rather than open source one because it gives a lot of other functionality. I'm new to it. I was just reading it, so I'm just asking your experience. Like, if my only use case is Azure, then why should I be like investing? Because Azure through in Azure, ARM is very easy and not a big deal. But you why you have to learn other YAML based or Ruby based or any other thing when you already Microsoft encourages so much on ARM based thing.
See, if you're new to it, I mean, if you're new to this environment and if you're looking to be a hop in on this, then you can just stick towards a ARM template. That's a pretty much simple thing that we have. But again, there you go with JSON, like the parameters that you're gonna remodify, right? It all works with JSON. But we have been like long days, DevOps itself is open source. It's a complete open source flavor that we have. So we had been like long days where years together, we had been working only with the open source environments. So the market of people is like more on YAML, it's more on PHP, Ruby, all these things. So for those folks, for an integrated support, Microsoft here supports with Ansible and Terraform as well. But if you want to make the automated infra management to be done, just like you're a beginner, then ARM should be the easy one. There's not much difference on the functionalities because it's an open source integration. See, whatever you find Ansible to be running at, let's say, a simple environment of your on-premise itself, that's going to be the same that you have it on the cloud also. The only difference is that cloud is going to ensure the scalability and the high availability. That's it. The scaling clusters, all these things, Microsoft is going to manage it. So it might be Ansible or it might be Terraform, anything that we're going to speak, Chef or Puppet, any automated infra management tools that you're going to speak. It's an integrated supports with Azure. So you no need to worry like whether I'll be having any sort of fluctuations on the functional capabilities, nothing as such. Okay, here is the VM which we have created, and you can find the public IP address of the virtual machine. Let's now go for the Cloud Shell that we have, and we will try connecting for this machine. We will try configuring the infra as well, I mean with the Ansible, and we will close with that. So here you can say, let's connect for the VM. Okay, so I'll go to the shell and I'll say SSH demo user at the rate. This is my IP. It's asking for connectivity. Let's say yes, and the password for the same. So here we have it. We now need to create a directory named, let's say Azure, okay, in the home directory, and we will keep the credentials to be added up over there. So let's say make a directory, Azure, okay. And there I will say a file to be created. So nano, we have declared the directory with a file name. Let's call the file Azure, okay, and here we are going to add the files with credentials. So here it is. Now let me go up. I will insert some following credentials here, okay, which can help me to call the service principal. So for subscription ID, I have the Azure subscription ID. Let me call it. It's here. Subscription ID. Cool. Let's give it up here. Client ID is the service principal app ID. So you can find it here. Service principal app ID. Secret is nothing but the service principal's password. You can find it here. Let's copy it. And finally, the tenant. So tenant is Azure Service Principal tenant. Again, once again here. Well, so there we go. Let's copy all these things, and I will go up here. I'll give it. And here, let me save, and I will exit from here. Okay, there we go. Now, see, Ansible is an agentless architecture which is based out of automation tools. So it needs SSH authentication to control the machine's public and private key pairs that we have. So let's create a pair of private and public keys, and that you need to call it on the Ansible. Okay, so I can go up here. I can say I need to generate keys. So SSH, it's a key gen. T. This will create a key for me. And then let's give up this command, which helps me to generate the SSH. So authorized keys. Excuse me. I'm going to call the authorized keys that we have. And there, let's copy for it. Okay, so copy ID. It's going to be demo user at the rate the IP address that we have. There we go. It's copied. See, can you find this? One key has been added. Now to list out the key, you need the SSH private key as well. So that you can do it. You can just say cat and you can configure here. So go here, SSH, and say ID underscore RSA. Come on. I'm sorry. It's asking for password. Okay. Yeah, one key is added. Now let's list out it. Let's say cat. And we'll call it here SSH / ID underscore RSA. So there we go. So now what happens here is that we are, just give me a moment, one moment, please. Yep. So here you have the private key. You have all these private keys which we have added up. And you need this private key to call it with a service connection. So what actually happens here is that now to configure your DevOps, no, to configure the DevOps with VM that we have, you need to go to the project settings. Okay, so we will go up here. You can find the project settings. You click here, and you can add the service connections. So can you find this? So the scroll down, you can find service connections. And here you can create service connection. You need to say that I will put up SSH. Where it is SSH. Yep. So you can say SSH. You need to call the host name. Okay, the service connection settings. This all we covered in the previous session. So you can configure all these things, and in the your playbook of the Ansible will get added up towards your VM. That's your Linux VM. And then you can develop the applications and you can host it over there. Okay, so this is how configuring configuring Ansible using DevOps with SSH environment works. So later, if you want to do any sort of changes, if you want to say like you want to deploy resource in Azure CD pipeline using Ansible, then you can directly come here, you can do it. You go to the pipelines, you do the changes, you can release it. That's it. Okay. So this is how Azure DevOps works related to the Ansible one. And working module or working terminology is said to be the same, how you have it for Terraform or such. Any questions?
Hey, so I have a question.
Yeah.
So we have the environment, the people are from the different background, like the developer and the infrastructure guys. All are they create themselves, like they create the VMs, or they modify some settings. So what is the ideal way to streamline this process actually? So like the approve and like it should be somewhere like DevOps thing. So we now current environment is like is boomed. Anyone can change anything actually. There's no trace.
I agree with your point. So what
Feedback.
really happens here is that to manage the things like who is going to work on which particular module, you have the boards. You can use boards to check like what exactly happens, who is working on a sprint or who is working on the changes that you're going to do. And if you want to make sense about the permissions, right? I'm sure that your question is based out of how we are going to allocate and manage the permissions. In that case, you need to come up for the Azure portal, and in access control, you can do role assignments. You can say who is going to add a VM, who is going to modify a VM, right? Who is even for a DevOps, you can say like what are the access control that you're gonna define as such, like privileges where they can edit the code or they can do the CD stuffs, right? So those things can be done on access control.
Is there any way we can provision like so for example, actually the network came, they have the full access to the modify anything on the network side, but some people actually they're doing some modification, but it's not coming to like it's not visible to other people actually. So is there any way like if you do modify, it should go through some process in Azure actually, like the approve kind of stuff. Is there anything possible?
Approve kind of, there's nothing like approve kind of stuff that we can do it over here because the administrator has to keep it to be added up over here on the Active Directory. So once when they are done with it, that's it. Then they get the permission. They don't need to get approved for any sort of changes that they need to do for every moment like that. So it's all based on the assignments that it's going to be added by the admin. You cannot. We don't have any options where we can say that each and every time for any sort of changes that they need to do, they will process with an approve or deny status. We don't have any sort of things like that.
It's 10 o'clock.
All right, thank you.
Good. Yeah. Any other questions?
In the same line, I have a question. Like in the previous video, we saw Terraform, that if somebody has provisioned anything, Terraform like creates a state of that, and if somebody would have changed anything in a resource group, let's say, which is managed by a Terraform, then probably next time when we are doing some changes, we can see that some changes are being made. Is this the
Yeah,
right approach?
we can see the logs, of course. We can see the logs of the changes which they have done. That will be available at all time. But if I'm not wrong, the question was about like what in case if I need to process an approval or deny, having a cross check of it. So that will not be possible.
If is that possible through like Azure DevOps, somebody who is reviewing the code before it's getting pushed for the deployment in production?
We can. Yep, that we can do. That's mostly works with. I mean, it mostly works based on the automations. So we used to write parameters and automation runbooks. So the build and commit release pipelines, no, most probably it will be working on an automated way. We don't have any sort of a kind of stuff like we go each and every individual time we check for the code. We don't do that. We make it on an automated way in real time. I hope you're getting it.
Yep, yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
All right. Any other? Well, all right then. Thank you so much for joining. Wish to be in touch with you people over the community zones. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Yeah. Thanks, Kazam.